Hello, welcome to the Burn KC ScorchCast. I am your host, Alex Blackburn. Thank you so much for bearing with me in this release of this week's ScorchCast. I've had a very busy week, still have a very busy week ahead, but wanted to get this in for you, make sure we got the ScorchCast going. Got a few things to talk about today. A lot of things, given the fact that this ScorchCast is 3 days late, but we're not going to talk about that, are we? No, we're not. But got some transfer portal news for college basketball. Got women's basketball debrief. Kansas winning the NIT is the main thing I'm going to be talking about there. Some sporting woes, some Royals woes, and then the Kansas City Current, Kansas City Blues. Some Chiefs news, not a ton, and then your comments on Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Got a few of those I have to go through as well. So sit back, strap in, join me on this little adventure. Should be a decent sized show. And let's just get started, shall we? Alright, starting with the college basketball news, some men's college basketball news. We'll get to the women's a little later. But we got some college basketball news for you first, starting with Kansas. Congratulations to Bill Self for reaffirming the Jayhawk faithful that he is here to stay and is here for the next couple of years after suffering some heart issues during the postseason this past year. A lot of people were speculating that Self might retire at the end of this season, but it does not look like that's going to be the case. It looks like he's pretty driven from all that rhetoric by the sound of his press conference, and he plans to stay for a while and hopefully give Coach K a run for his money, which, if you're not a Duke fan, I would say Coach K is universally disliked. Um, no shade towards Coach K, but it's kind of the truth. Duke in general, really. Um, but honestly, congrats to Coach Self for toughing this out and for giving us the good news as Jayhawk faithful. Even if you're not a Jayhawk fan, you have to admire Bill Self's willingness to come back and coach this team, and just Bill Self as a coach in general. I mean, he's in the Naismith Hall of Fame for a reason. So congrats to him. As for transfer portal news regarding the Jayhawks, obviously they've had 5 guys go off to greener pastures. Cam Martin committed to Boise State, along with his brother Bobby Pettiford, though Zach Clements, MJ Rice, and who was that fifth one? So we got Pettiford, Rice, Cam Martin, Zach Clements. Number 5. Oh, yes, food. Jeez Louise. My apologies. But we've got a few guys leaving there. 4 out of the 5 still have not found homes. I believe that they will, especially Joe Yesufu. Joe Yesufu, I think, is the best out of that group. But even then, I think the other 3 guys will find homes in the very near future. It's still very early in transfer portal season, which is another reason why there's a lot of speculation as to where the Jayhawks will go in the transfer portal. They talked to Nicholas Timberlake out of Towson, who is a really good guard who can shoot the ball really well. So I think that would be a great addition. Check my article from 2 days ago to hear my full rundown of him. And Hunter Dickinson is another name for the Jayhawks that has popped up multiple times. I know that they've had a Zoom call with him already, and have been in talks with him. Let's hope that there's something there. The Jayhawks could use a big. They've shown that they don't need it, but that could be huge. To have a experienced big, so that you can move KJ Adams to that 4 spot and still have Ernest Uday coming off the bench, and then once Dickinson leaves, Uday can come in and be that full time starter. But that's kind of what it's looking like for the Jayhawks right now. For Kansas State, I know that they're talking with LJ Cryer. LJ Cryer and Jerome Tang both have Baylor connections, so I wouldn't be surprised if Cryer definitely had high interest for the Wildcats. Other than that, I really haven't heard a whole lot of news regarding the transfer portal and Kansas State. They're kind of the quiet ones out of the group. Um, as for Missouri, though, Missouri's looks like they're on track to land Caleb Love. I heard hearings that they had already landed a commitment from him, but I think those hearings were a little misguided. I retweeted a tweet that I don't believe was true, so I went ahead and unretweeted it. My apologies to any Mizzou fans that follow me on Twitter for that false hope, but keep your hopes up. I mean, I think he's a St. Louis kid. He's you looking for a home that has some upside. Unfortunately, North Carolina did not have hardly any upside. In fact, they tanked pretty hard compared to their, you know, preseason predictions. They were preseason number one and ended up not even making the tournament. So I think Caleb Love is going to look for a team that is on the up and up, and that's Missouri. I know he's getting interest though from Indiana as well. Michigan is another one that's in the running for him, and a couple other schools. I mean, he's a pretty hot commodity. So if Missouri doesn't get him, I know Tamar Bates out of Indiana is also on their board. And he's also a Missouri kid, but he's a Kansas City kid. Um, he might actually be from Kansas City, Kansas, but he's listed as Kansas City, Missouri product on most recruiting websites. So that would be big for. Either way, Missouri's getting a good guard, and they're going to improve that backcourt even further. Their front court, has a lot of guys leaving, so I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to pick up a front court guy. They did pick up the Colorado State transfer, John Tonji, who shoots the ball super well. So that improves their backcourt. If they get Caleb Love or Tamar Bates, I think they have one of the best backcourts in not only the SEC, but in the nation. I think that would be a huge get for them. But we'll just have to see what happens. Obviously, it is still quite early in the transfer portal season. I mean, the season ended 2 days ago, um, and you know, most of those commitments in the transfer portal will come in the early summer months. Once workouts are starting, once there's more concrete evidence of players leaving and staying. I mean, obviously with KU, you've got the possibility of Kevin McCullough coming back. Grady Dick and Jalen Wilson have both declared for the draft, but McCullough is going to test the NBA waters and then report back, potentially to come back for another season. As for Kansas State, you've got Marquise Noel winning the Bob Cousy Award for best point guard in the nation. He fully deserves that. I mean, at 5'8", he looked like a man amongst boys, which is insane. He's a great basketball player. He committed to going drafting in the NBA. It will be tough with his size, but I think he's got the skills there. And then Jerome Tang winning Coach of the Year as well, so that's another big time, uh, big time get for Kansas State basketball. They definitely had one of their better years in recent history. And I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to be on the up and up, especially if they can manage to get LJ Cryer. But obviously, Cryer's going to have a lot of interest, including from Kansas, who has also been in talks with them. So that's some transfer portal news for the men's basketball. That's it as well. Let's get into some women's basketball. Kansas winning the women's NIT. That's big, and they won it with authority too. And they were a lot like UConn in that they just slaughtered opponents throughout this tournament. I mean, they won by double digits in every single game except for one in Nebraska where they won by 9. So it may as well be double digits. I mean, shoot. But this team looks really, really good, and this team looks like they're going to make a ton of noise and make a run at that Big 12 title next year. Tiana Jackson is coming back for another year. She was their marquee big in down low in the post, and she can dominate. I think Holly Kurz-Geter is going to excuse me is going to graduate. I don't think she's coming back, and but that doesn't mean a ton because I think they returned the rest of that team. So Kansas women's basketball may prove to be a problem. Um, this next year. They'll I think they're plenty tourney. Yeah, I think they're tourney probable at this point, and I think they'll become even more tourney probable as the year goes on next year. So be on the lookout for them. Just kind of wanted to mention them. Uh, Unfortunately, Kansas State women's basketball and Missouri women's basketball did not make the tournament. Either one, and really didn't do so hot this season. So I'm not going to really talk about them, unfortunately. I'm sorry if that's what you were looking for. But I only talk about winners. That's a lie, and you'll soon see with these next couple of segments. Um, you'll see. So let's talk about the local losers. And I hate calling them that. They're not losers. They're professional athletes that earn 1,000 times more than me, quite literally. Um, but I mean, I, Sporting Kansas City. Let's start with them. They can't score. I mean, there's like a lid on the net. And I don't know how that's possible, but there is. I mean, they can't produce at all on offense. And they have the possession, they command possession in certain games, but they just can't put the ball in net. And something has to change. And the release of Ben Sweat and a couple other players isn't I don't think that's going to change anything. Um, you know, yeah, there were guys on the guys that got released were guys that put in little to no effort towards the scoring, towards the offensive production. They complained a lot, and it makes sense that a guy that's kind of old school like Peter Vermees would release them. As for the scoring situation, though, I don't think it's improved. Um, yeah, you can give these young guys the chance that, they've been chomping at the bit for. Yeah, you can do this, that, and the other thing and adjust offensively, but in the end, you got to get shots on goal. And people are just not in the right positioning for those shots on goal. They got to get in the box. They got to get, you know, free of any defender. I mean, Sporting Kansas City, once they get in the opposing half, gets completely locked up. I mean, even on corners where you're supposed to have ample chance to put the ball in the back of the net, especially with a guy like Graham Zuzi, who is or at least was so good at putting the ball in net, or excuse me, putting the ball where it can be put in the net. But it's hard to fathom, especially if you just look at the numbers and solely the numbers. You should say, well, this should be one of the most offensively productive teams in the MLS, and it's just not. And what they have to do to improve. I know it's early in the season and everything, but I mean, that's no excuse. You have to put guys in the right positioning and put guys that are able to put the ball in net in the middle. Yeah, and when you have midfielders that can't score, you're lost. I mean, when you have strikers that can't score, you're lost. When you have wings, etc., that can't score, you're lost. And the Sporting Kansas City team looks as lost as it's ever looked. And you got time to change, but I wouldn't bank on just waiting and seeing who is, who's good and who's not. Sporting wants to see results now. This is a club that is built on excellence and built on, you know, uh, winning. Sporting's one of the most successful clubs in the MLS, and it's just not looking like it this year. And people were talking about, well, where's that third championship? Where's that third championship? It's probably 5 years down the line at this point because of how rough this and how young this team is. I mean, it is an incredibly raw team. It's a young team now that all the old guard is gone except sans a couple players. But that's still no excuse because as we saw with Ben Sweat and the guys that got released, the effort's just not there from the players. And the effort needs to be there. You need to get guys in that are hungry for the goals, that are hungry to make an impact. Not guys that, are looking for a paycheck. And that's just all Sporting has right now, except for the old guard. Are guys that think they're all that and they're just not. And in the end, they just don't feel like they have to try. So that's kind of my thoughts on Sporting. I need to watch a little bit more film on them to make a really in-depth analysis on them. But right now, it's just I can't stand watching them because the effort's just not there. This looks like the most lackadaisical team that I've seen in sports this year. I mean, it's sad. And Peter Vermees needs to whip this team into shape right now before real trouble starts to occur. So that's kind of my thoughts on Sporting Kansas City. As for the Royals, everyone's favorite subject, let me tell you, um, I wouldn't panic yet. I a lot of people are panicking about the Royals right now, and that's all well and good, and it's understandable given the apathy that has developed in this fan base for since the 2015 World Series. I mean, Dayton Moore and company really screwed up this system. I mean, yeah, he bought us a world championship. Yeah, he deserves his flowers for that, I guess. But in all honesty, it was Ned Yost that did the main work there. Because honestly, looking at the players that Dayton Moore brought in, these were guys that were aging. These were guys that were past their prime. And I get it, you're a small market team and whatnot, and there's only so much you can do with a small market team, or so everyone says. Owners of a small market team are still multimillionaires and can afford basically whatever they want. They just don't want to. And all this talk about a downtown stadium when you have this bad of a team, you can see why the apathy's there. I get that John Sherman is trying to remedy things. I get Matt Quatraro is trying to remedy things, but it's just so far it's been too little too late. I think there is a lot of apathy regarding this Royals franchise, and I don't want to say, well, the Royals are going to leave, the Royals are going to leave, but in the next few years, you may hear talk of that. You may hear talk of the Royals possibly moving locations because of how apathetic this fan base has grown. People still love the Royals. People still, I love the Royals. I know I talk a lot of crap on them, but I love the Royals. I've loved them since I was a baby. I mean, there's pictures of me in the Royals press conference room, talking to media. Not really, but I was 4. I don't think they would want to talk to me, but yeah, like I've been a lifelong Royals fan. This is why I rant about them so much, is because I love them. Things are not going well. We're kind of a dumpster fire of an organization right now, and frankly speaking, the stuff that's being done to remedy that could have been done like 4 years ago. And it just wasn't. I mean, shoot, the World Series was almost a decade ago. It was 8 years ago, mind you. No, I'm not trying to make you feel old. I'm not, but it was 8 years ago, and I don't. As far as the play so far this regular season, there's room for optimism. The offensive production is there. It is. I promise it is. There's batters on this team that can get on base and can score runs. It's just a matter of that first year management making the decisions in order to make that roster as productive as possible. And right now, they're kind of feeling things out. It's very experimental because you've got a young core, you've got a first year manager in Matt Quatraro, which, him having COVID now really doesn't help anything. I hope that the bench coach uh, can at least manage. Um, but you look at this roster, and there's bats there. It's just a matter of putting them in the right spots, and so far they haven't been put in the right spots. This team that scored 9 runs, you know, a week ago is putting up duds again because there's just that learning curve of roster building, of lineup building that Matt Quatraro has not mastered yet. Um, and I know it's not just him, but again, this is a very young management. This is a first year management for most of the guys in that locker room, and there's so much that they can do with the inexperience that they have. Um, as for pitching, it's looked better, but it certainly has looked a lot worse. And last year is when it looked a lot worse. I think pitching's made improvements, and I think a lot of people are saying, well, they scored, four. The Minnesota Twins scored 4 runs against us. The Blue Jays scored 4 runs against us. What's the big idea? They blanked the Twins the first 2 games. Brady Singer threw 5 scoreless innings. So what's your point? That would not happen last year. Last year we got 11 runs put up on us before the second inning because of Cal Eldred. And I hate talking good about Aroldis Chapman. I think he's nothing for nothing, but I think he's a terrible human being. But he's back to his old form with Brian Sweeney's pitching or with Brian Sweeney's pitch coaching. I mean, he's throwing absolute gas right now. He's throwing 103, 104 miles an hour regularly. That's insane. And Cal Eldred could not. Uh, there's no way. There's no way Cal Eldred could have coached Aroldis Chapman to go back to his old self after we saw him on the Reds. There's no way. And uh, I think there's still room for improvement. Again, Ryan Sweeney's a first year pitching coach, but it's looked worse. And a lot of people are giving a lot of flack to this pitching squad that has gotten a lot better. You've seen improvements from the young guys like Brady Singer, like Chris Bubich. Brad Keller, still kind of inconsistent, but I mean, he showed out in the spring. Um, and Amir Garrett, Dylan Coleman. The relievers are light years better than they were last year. I mean, this reliever core was terrible last year. And now serviceable. As long as the Royals can put up points on the board, this is a just fine pitching committee. And a lot of people really, really, really just don't see that. So, I get it. Again, it's the apathy, but it's you gotta actually watch the Royals, which I understand is hard enough as it is, given the fact that they are only on a TV program that is ran by a bankrupt company. Um, More on them later. I've had articles about them in the past. I will not mention them by name. Um, but it, when you watch this team, the pieces are there. We've heard the same old song and dance. Well, they'll be good next year. They'll be good next year. Isn't good next year. I believe this Royals team could be really good in the next 2 years if they just stay the course and hold this roster together. They have to pay guys that are proving that they need to be paid, like Bobby Witt Jr. And judging in the past, yeah, that's not the Royals. They don't pay players, but I hope that John Sherman can see, even with all this talk about the downtown stadium, that he needs to keep this team together in order for them to be good again. And I think he sees that from what I've heard in interviews. I think he sees that, but we'll just have to wait and see. Again, the Royals are a wait and see franchise, and unfortunately, for a lot of people, the waiting has gone on too long. There's room for optimism this season. Be a little bit more patient, and I promise you'll see dividends. That being said, if you don't be surprised. Entirely. Entirely. But I don't know. It's the Royals, you know. It's if you saw on Twitter, there was a sign out in the outfield that was missing the R in Royals. And that has to be an all-time embarrassing moment for the Royals. I mean, it was during a game. It was during a game. Like, come on. Like, uh, the Royals are a baseball team. I'll end it with that. Onward to the KC Current. A little bit to talk about with them. Not a ton, but a little bit. Uh, it looks like a team that is still figuring itself out. There's a lot of new pieces to this Kansas City Current program. Dabina, a couple other free agent signings, a couple rookies playing, and just overall, it's not necessarily a rebuilding year, but it's a transition year for the Current. They made the championship last year. They were sitting pretty. They looked like a team that had momentum going in, and then they dropped two. Um, it's unfortunate, but it happens. I would not panic yet about this team. They're still cruising along, and they'll still. I believe again. They're a lot like the Royals, except they actually won games last year. Um, but I think this is a team that has the pieces there to be a contender. Um, that's a title contender, unlike the Royals, but it's a team that has talent, and that was shown last year, and that has been shown in spurts this year. I think they just need to get their feet under them. I think they just have had problems with positioning. They've had problems with defense. Um, the defense, yeah, Portland Thorns are a great team. They're the team that beat the Kansas City Current in the title game last year. Uh, but they slaughtered the Current on offense. I mean, just slaughtered them. The defense looked like they had no idea what they were doing. They weren't in great position. They were sacrificing AD French to the gods. I mean, it wasn't pretty at all from what I watched. And having my girlfriend right next to me to explain what exactly I was watching was pretty nice too. But it, you can't help but think, well, better luck next year. They're going to be bad this year. No, they're not. No, they're not. There's plenty room for improvement, yes, but remain optimistic. This is a team that showed that they can win, and this is a team that showed that they can come back from adversity. And I think they have the tools to be winners. I mean, Devine is an incredible soccer player, and will provide a spark once she heals up in full. Um, but overall, this is a team that is 2 games into their season. Don't stress. Well, you're saying stress about Sporting Kansas City. Yeah, because it's clear that Sporting's effort just is non-existent. For the current, it's very different. There's plenty of effort there. There's just a lack of chemistry. With a new roster, you're going to get that. And there was a lot of players leaving and coming in last year. This is not the same team necessarily that won the national that was in the national championship or the NWSL championship. But this is a team that can easily make it back there and has the pieces from that jeez that title game run that um can push this team to victory. And new pieces that can push it to victory. Um, they just need to find their footing. They just need to be able to understand that, hey, you know, things happen. It's, you know, you take it on the chin and move on. Um, you can't focus and dwell on games that, you were close in but no cigar, like the North Carolina one, or ones that you just let get away from you, like the Portland one. Hopefully, they've gotten the losing out of their system and they can go on a good streak to build some confidence. So that's all I got on Kansas City Current. I believe their next game is Friday or Saturday. Let me check. See current schedule 2023. They are playing. Yeah, by the looks of it, well, shoot. Yeah, they're playing April 15th next. So that's a week from Saturday. They're playing an away game against a good Chicago Red Stars team. And then after that is the Challenge Cup against the Houston Dash. Um, we'll see how they do in the Challenge Cup. If they can end up winning that, that's going to be a huge confidence builder. But got to get past the Red Stars first. So good luck to the ladies. Hopefully they can do that. Now, time for some blues news. See what I did there? That was pretty cool, right? I'm a cool, hit, positive guy after talking about the three biggest losers in Kansas City sports right now. It's not losers. Sporting Kansas City starting to, and the Royals have been, but Current's not a bunch of losers. Some of them are a bunch of losers. Come on, they're professional athletes. They make more money than you. How can they be losers? I digress. Some blues news, though. Um, Speaking of amateur sports, the Blues had their trip to Dallas canceled by the Dallas Harlequins. I guess they had better stuff to do. Um, they had a playoff game. They made the playoffs because a team, I guess, just quit out of the playoffs. I don't know. It's Division 2 rugby. But anything can happen. But Kansas City Blues still had a game. They had a game in Denver, Colorado against the Denver Barbarians. Unfortunately, they could not come away with the victory, but did come away with some learning opportunities. They ended up losing 24-10 against the Barbos. Um, it, it again was a learning experience. You got guys on that team that can definitely make a difference, but this is a developmental season. It doesn't really count for anything except for just glory and development. And you got to a lot of good experience for guys on that roster. It's interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see where this roster goes, because you've got a lot of guys that are right on the cusp of playing on that Division One team, and then guys that may, with a few improvements, could absolutely make that Division One team. Um, but that's what the spring season is all about: is making those improvements and finding that development. And it was a good development game. Right now, it's scheduled for Saturday, April 9th to be the next game against the Iowa Selects. Um, Details will be released later in the week, I'm sure. But right now, it's against the Iowa Selects. As for the rest of the season, they got a game on. We have a game on. I believe April 15th is the game after. Well, it's either April 15th or April 22nd that the team heads down to Columbia, Missouri to take on the Columbia team. And then after that, I think it's the it's someone on April 29th. I'll have to go back and check and see. Like I said, though, spring season, kind of the developmental season, we've seen some excellent performances from guys that are on that cusp, like Gavin Kirk, like Connor Thompson, like Omar Tapia, guys that are just right there, and could very well be on the Division One roster by the fall season. So, congrats to those guys on some great performances. Keep it up. Hopefully they can come through and make that Division One roster. That would be really cool. So that's all I got for Blues news. Let's get into some minor news here, and then we'll get into some comments, and then we'll end this little thing, shall we? So let's go. All right. Only going to talk briefly about the Chiefs. This is some minor news. DeAndre Hopkins rumors. At this point, if nothing happens in the draft, I would say just forget about him. Um, I think DeAndre Hopkins is a very hot commodity. I think there was a lot of general interest because Hopkins said he wanted to earn a ring. But now it's kind of looking like he wants to earn a bag, earn a paycheck. And which is fine. It's professional sports. These athletes can do whatever they want. It's a player-based market. Um, but I think a lot of Chiefs fans are sorely disappointed. I would say get that thought out of your head and recognize that when you have Patrick Mahomes and Brett Veach, you have a chance to win. Brett Veach knows what he's doing. He's improved this defense tenfold. This defense is going to be real good next year. They got a fantastic linebacking core now, and could easily be a top 10 defense if they add one or two more pieces, which is still possible. It's still possible. Frank Clark might come back. I mean, he hasn't been signed by anybody or anything like that, but there's a possibility Frank Clark comes back. I mean, that's been rumored. And, I wouldn't fret too much about the wide receiver room because there's a lot of really good wide receivers in this draft. I wouldn't be entirely surprised if the Chiefs just said screw it and moved up to grab Quentin Johnston. Um, I think they have a real possibility of grabbing Xavier Hutchinson too, which is, uh, in my opinion, a very a criminally underrated prospect coming out of Iowa State. I mean, he's a possession receiver. He runs great routes, and was basically the Iowa State receiving core for the entirety of the 2022-2023 season. Um, do I still want Hopkins? Kind of. I mean, it would be a nice addition, but I wouldn't put all my eggs in one basket like a lot of Chiefs fans are doing and bank on him being a Chief. There's a possibility, especially if he gets released. But again, it's kind of looking like DeAndre Hopkins is asking for a marquee deal right now, and the best the Chiefs can really give him um, is a kind of Juju Smith-Schuster type deal, which I don't think is what he wants. Um, that being said, there's still time to restructure the Chris Jones contracts, to re-sign Jerick McKinnon, to restructure possibly Mahomes contracts, to create more cap space, to sign people maybe in the summer, or in the early summer, I should say. And there's still time to make, in my opinion, more pressing roster changes for this Chiefs team. Um, but we'll just have to see, because Brett Veach works in mysterious ways. So it could be very possible that he just says, we're just gonna play it in the draft, how we do things, um, which again would be very Veach like, given his draft track record over the past couple of seasons. I think he's definitely got that confidence to say, "Hey, let's just go to the draft and see what happens." I know that burns a lot of Chiefs fans' ears to hear. Um, it's a possibility. It's also a possibility that they trade for Brandon Ayuk or oh, what's his face? I can't remember his name. Brandon Ayuk is one though that I've seen on plenty of boards, and frankly speaking, I would love that trade. I think he's a way better gadget guy than McCole Hardman ever was, and he has the possibility to fit in as a great wide receiver for this Chiefs team that thrives off of gadget wide receivers. So we'll just have to see what goes on with the Chiefs there. So, anyways, I wanted to make a separate section for some commentary that we got from social media, from my articles, and from just anything that I put out there. I got I recently started a Reddit, and it got a lot of traction real quick. So I appreciate everyone that has commented on my statuses, and content, on all platforms. But Reddit definitely took off pretty quick. So I just wanted to read a couple comments from those guys and kind of respond to them, in a video post. So let's get started. Da, 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 da. Let me find my Reddit page first. Okay, so in the past week, da, 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 let's see here. Okay, so let's. Did my Wells post get taken down? Actually, I don't think it did. Yeah, no, never mind. So about the transfer portal. Um, we got some coming down for some reason. That's odd. Huh. Anyway, sorry. I'm cool with Joe leaving. This is about Joe Yusufu. I'm cool with Joe leaving. I want size and defense. I'm assuming this guy's really high on Hunter Dickinson. Um, there's a handful of guys that could take this place next year, take his place, and do a better job. I really think we'll be fine, in regard to the Kansas Jayhawks. We'll be fine. Um, they got a lot of guard depth coming in, so I think they'll be fine there. And what Atomic Mark has to say. Um, what I'm hearing is that Self wanted a complete house cleaning because he was unhappy with the defense last year. Direct quote from Self. Zach wants to play. He wants to help us. He loves KU. He wants us to win. Self midway through the season, um, said this, but let's call it like it is. We are not going to change how we play to fit him. He knows that. He's not expecting that. If we said we were going to play two bigs regardless, or we were going to play zone, that would benefit Zach. That's not what we're going to do. He understands that it's nobody's fault. As of now, only Ernest and Zuby are predicted to stay on for Kansas. The rest of the past year's bench is potentially leaving. Um, that's, I think, a direct quote from my article, actually, that I wrote. Yeah, it was kind of written on the walls that there was going to be a big time bench clear out for the Kansas Jayhawks. I would assume they're going to add like crazy in the portal. They do have 4 freshmen coming in, um, but I really think Kansas adds at least two new transfers, potentially more, preferably more, because did not have that deep of a bench to begin with, and now they have even less of a deep bench. So we'll just, yeah. Kind of ticked Clements didn't stick around. He got in the Bill Self doghouse and never came out. I think he'll shine in a new environment. Um, yeah, he just didn't seem like a fit for this Kansas team. I think he has the potential to shine somewhere else. As long as he stops shooting the 3 ball as a big and actually can get physical in the paint. Um, I mean, that's normally how Bill Self likes his bigs, and Zach Clements just simply wasn't that. So, um, random question though from Just a Stupid Bunny. That's the username, not the actual being asking the question. Random question: how does this usually shake out? Does Self have a frank conversation with players like, "Look, you're a great guy, but after watching you for a year or a few years, I don't think you're a good fit anymore. You can stay, but really don't see you playing more than a minute or two every few games." Or is it the other way around? In my experience, it's definitely the player making the decision for themselves. Sometimes it's mutual, but overall, it's definitely when it's mutual. It's a lot of it's generally guys that are going to the NBA when it's mutual. You think back to Dean Smith and MJ talking with each other. MJ being told to go pro by Dean Smith himself comes to mind. And that's just kind of how it works out with the draft. But when it comes to transfers, it's generally the Chiefs. The Chiefs, definite Chiefs. The players. Sorry, I'm losing it right now because I just got out of class. My brain's kind of running on fumes, but we're cruising. But just overall, it's the players' decision most of the time, if not every time. Um, and that's kind of the end of the comments on that one. Um, and then after I announced Sean Snyder going to KU football, which is a piece of minor news that I probably should have brought up in the main segments of the ScorchCast. But yeah, Sean Snyder is going to Kansas University, not Kansas State, which has a lot of the Wildcat faithful ticked off. Bill Snyder has blocked a ton of people on Twitter because of it. A lot of people are saying it's a power play. Got a lot of comments on this Reddit post of pretty wild. Have a lot of respect for the Snyders. It's a huge grab for us. It's a destination job, is what this guy says. Um, we know it now to be true, but a couple days ago, this guy says, "Sorry, I'm suspicious that this is an April Fool's joke that KU Athletics and the KC Star are in on." Um, he asks, "Why would we want this guy?" KU, excuse me, the Wildcats would hire him if he's good at what he does. Even if he's not great, they'll probably give him an office on his name alone. My point is, if KSU doesn't want him, why should KU? Um, Sean Snyder won Special Teams Coach of the Year in 2015 and 2017. He managed a really solid unit at the University of Illinois um, for a few years and at K State for a few years as well. Um, I think he's going to be an asset because that Kansas football special teams was just not good. It was one of the very weak points of that really stellar Kansas football team that turned over a new leaf, as we all know. And seeing that improve, I think, is one of Lance Leipold's biggest things. Um, and I definitely can see, um, I can definitely see him being a major asset. Excuse me. Um, Gosh, did I move? Oh no, my cat is on my cat is on my table. Um, Sorry, but just overall, I think it's a great hire for KU. That special teams unit was hurting, so having a guy that knows special teams really well and has had success in the past will be really beneficial. As for why KSU didn't hire him, I would ask Chris Clement. I think a lot of people were really bagging on the fact that Clement got the job over Snyder's son. But obviously they kind of didn't. I would assume it was because they didn't want to play nepotism there. Um, that looks pretty bad for a program. But Clement's got a lot of success. He's had a lot of success since taking the KSU job. Um, Overall, I think Sean Snyder, um, he's a great coach. Just not quite. In my opinion, at least, he's not quite to head coach. A lot of those special teams guys do it for a while. I mean, you look at um, just the special teams guys in the NFL. They've been doing it for 30, 40 years. I mean, it's fine art, and it's kind of independent from offense, defense. You know, managing that. They're kind of their own brand. So that's kind of my comment on that. In terms of any other comments that weren't on Reddit, um, my allergies are killing me today, so apologies if I sniffle quite loud. Um, there are a few other comments um, that I saw. Let me go back here to my posts on Facebook. I believe there was a comment or two on Facebook, or maybe there wasn't. Never mind. Maybe that was last week. My apologies. Um, but before we end the show, I got a couple things to cover. For one, rest in peace to Gary Schwartz, the former Kansas track coach, um, and father of my former rugby coach at the University of Kansas, Matt Schwartz. Um, Gary was a huge proponent of rugby and was a big time Kansas legend. He really got Kansas track on its wheels, and made it into the beast that it is today. And I mean it's a great program. And Gary was a huge part in developing that. So rest in peace to Gary Schwartz. Um, a lighter note though. Um, Sorry. Uh, Congratulations to my mother, Melissa D. Donder, on winning the bracket challenge. Um, my mother got 570 points, um, and ended up winning. She picked Alabama as the champion, but she also had three brackets, no, four brackets. So well deserved. Thank you so much uh, for everyone that played, not just my mother. It was a great time. I think a lot of brackets got busted really, really early. Um, But overall, we had a lot of fun. My mom ended up winning both the free and the paid one. So congratulations to her. Well done. She's a bracket genius. And I'd like to say I get it from her, but there's times where I go against the grain and it ends up biting me in the butt. So, um, my camera just got really bright there for some reason. Um, but I don't know why I'm trying to figure out the lighting this late in the show, but I am. Um, but that's really our show. Nothing much more to mention here. Thank you all for joining me. I know it's been kind of a pain trying to get these ScorchCasts out. I've been really, really busy as of late, but thank you for bearing with me. I hope you enjoy the product. I try to put my best foot forward for you guys, because you deserve it. Thank you for being a reader. Thank you for being a viewer. Thank you for being a friend, as the Golden Girls once said. And just thank you. I appreciate your presence. I know there's been a couple of people that have written in my name for the Kansas City People's Choice Awards, as best blog, and I can't thank you enough for that. For that, I'm truly grateful for all the support that I've gotten over the year that I've done this. Um, and if you want to go vote for me, in that KC People's Choice Awards, I'll share the link on my main page, um, here after this, and just yeah, go vote for me. Um, if you like what you see, if you like what you read, I would really appreciate it. But yeah, I try to remain humble. So, and again, I cannot express enough my gratitude for everyone that supports this passion project. You guys are rock stars, and I love each and every one of you. But again, this has been the Burn Casey signing off. Have a great night, and I will see you next Wednesday, more than likely. Because unfortunately, I will be out of town in Dallas on Sunday. I'll be there with my girlfriend, visiting my girlfriend's friends and family. Originally, it was supposed to be for the Stevie Nicks and Billy Joel concert, but Stevie Nicks' band got COVID and it got postponed. So we're trying to work our way into that Kansas City show. Um, that's in August. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get into that one. But this has been the Burn Casey signing off. Thank you.